The warm sunset light washed over our big balcony as I posed for my sister Charlotte, who was busy taking photos of me. If you don't know me yet, I'm Donna, a 21-year-old fashion influencer extraordinaire and a soon-to-be supermodel. I love everything glamorous, from designer clothes to the sparkly lifestyle of a true diva. My parents are always busy running our family corporation, but they buy me whatever I want, including the spectacular dress I was wearing for the upcoming Elite Model Look contest. Suddenly, Mom stepped out and told us to get ready because we were eating out to celebrate Charlotte helping Dad secure a new business contract. Later at a fancy restaurant, Mom, Dad, and Charlotte walked ahead while I live-streamed to my 329,000 followers. My fans were commenting that I should compete for Miss USA, so I blew them some air kisses. Suddenly, a guy bumped into me, causing me to drop my phone and cut the stream. I stood up furious and barked at him for ruining my live stream and causing my fans to unfollow him, asking if he was walking with his eyes closed. The guy, Matthew, just smiled, apologized, and looked up my username to give me a follow before running off. What a jinx. But as soon as I reached our table, I was shocked to see his face again. Dad turned to me and introduced Matthew as our new finance director. I rolled my eyes and muttered how important he was, but Matthew just grinned and said his job wasn't as important as live streaming. I was trembling with anger, especially when Charlotte laughed at his joke. Then Dad turned serious and told me I had to study business from now on and stop all the modeling and live streaming. I was shocked and asked why he suddenly stopped supporting my dreams. But Dad just avoided my eyes and ignored me to chat with Matthew. The moment we got home, I marched upstairs, threw myself face first onto my bed, and started crying about how unreasonable Dad was being. The scent of my favorite lavender candles usually calmed me down, but right then, I was absolutely boiling with anger. Everything in my life was completely fine until that annoying Matthew guy showed up and ruined it. Charlotte followed me into the room, sat on the edge of the mattress, and began comforting me by rubbing my back. She then whispered a suggestion that she could secretly attend all the boring business classes for me, allowing me to fully focus on preparing for my modeling contest. I sat up instantly, thinking it was an absolutely brilliant idea, and I hugged my amazing, quick-witted sister for saving my life. A few days later, I was at the school fashion club, putting all of my energy into practicing my runway walk. The room smelled of fresh fabric and hairspray, but my focus was shattered when my phone started buzzing nonstop in my pocket. Matthew just kept disturbing me with his constant nonsense. I stepped off to the side of the wooden runway, pulled out my phone, and checked the screen. He had bombarded me with messages asking me what I was doing and what I was up to today. To make matters worse, his latest message was a picture of actual wedding ring, followed by a text asking if they looked okay and if I thought they would match up. I panicked, felt my face turn hot, and frantically dialed his number to ask him what all this crazy gibberish was about. Matthew answered right away, sounding completely casual over the line. He asked if Dad hadn't told me yet, explaining that he and I were supposed to be getting engaged and taking charge of the family company together. I stood there completely frozen, wondering what on earth this guy was talking about. Since when was I expected to marry some random guy I barely even knew, and take over a massive corporate business that I had zero interest in? I decided right then that Dad had to give me a proper explanation for this mess, so I grabbed my designer bag and hurriedly ran out of the club. The moment I arrived home, I burst straight into Dad's office to confront him. The room smelled of old leather and rich mahogany. He didn't even look shocked. He just leaned back in his chair, let out a heavy sigh, and told me that he had been planning on telling me about the engagement himself. I was absolutely mad, shouting that he couldn't just dictate my entire career and decide who I was going to marry. Dad just remained patient, looking up at me, and gently said that he only wanted what was best for me. Before I could argue further, Charlotte suddenly burst through the heavy doors. She looked furious as she told Dad that I hadn't even been attending my business classes and was still completely indulging in my nonsense fashion club. She angrily asked him how he could possibly expect someone like me to handle the entire company. My heart practically stopped. I stared at her, wondering why on earth she was telling him our secret. But then I pondered for a second, thinking that maybe she was actually trying to help me get out of the deal. I quickly agreed with her, telling Dad that she was completely right and that I had absolutely no interest in his business, so I couldn't possibly do it. Dad didn't even blink. He kept his face completely deadpan, barely looking up from his paperwork as he interrupted me mid-sentence. He calmly stated that if that was the case, I could just start my corporate journey as a vice president to get some real hands-on experience. Then he looked at Charlotte and added that she would serve as my personal assistant to support me. I let out a horrified cry, tears welling up in my eyes, and ran straight out of the room all the way to the garden gazebo. I slumped down on the wooden bench, crying about how terribly this had turned out. Dad used to love us both so much, but now he wouldn't even listen to a single word I said. Suddenly, my face lit up through my tears as I spotted Charlotte walking down the garden path toward me. I wiped my face, thinking my amazing sister had surely come up with a backup plan to save us. But as she stepped inside the gazebo, she looked completely mad. She shouted right in my face that she couldn't believe how hard she had tried to prove herself to Dad, only to watch him hand everything over to a simple-minded fool like me. I sat there frozen, completely shocked by her word. I stammered, asking her if she really thought of me as a simple-minded person. We just stood there, glaring at each other with pure resentment. If that was how she truly felt, then fine. I decided right then and there that I was going to accept that vice president position, just to show her exactly how simple-minded I really was. The next morning, I doled myself up to the absolute nines and strutted into the grand company lobby under a brand new name, Miss Vice President. I had specifically chosen a super dramatic, complicated designer dress that practically swept the polished marble floor, and I could instantly see the sheer shock on everyone's faces as I walked past. I held my chin up high with a satisfied smirk, looking at all those gawking employees who clearly wished they could escape from their boring, drab suit. But then I spotted Matthew standing near the elevators, and my satisfaction turned into pure fury when I realized he was actually stifling a laugh at me. Distracted by my anger, my high heel suddenly got tangled up in the layers of my long dress, and I tripped, crashing straight down to the floor. It was a complete disaster, and I could hear people giggling all around the lobby. Matthew quickly stepped forward, offering me his hand and asking if I was okay. I ignored his hand completely, thinking that I absolutely did not need his pity help, and scrambled up by myself while trying my best to act completely fine before walking away. Shortly after that, we moved into the big conference room with its dull, plain white blinds for a morning meeting. Matthew introduced me to the company's core board members and immediately started announcing a bunch of new strategic corporate goals. He kept throwing around terms like return on investment, profit margins, and financial accounts, causing me to roll my eyes and let out a huge yawn. I honestly wondered what kind of alien language he was speaking. After what felt like an eternity, he finally finished his presentation and asked if anyone wanted to add anything to the discussion. My eyes lit up with excitement. This was my perfect chance to show off my true leadership skills. I stood up quickly, slamming my hands decisively onto the long conference table, and told everyone confidently that this office was seriously lacking some color, suggesting that violet blinds would be a fantastic start. I also added that putting up some motivational pictures could really help boost everyone's low productivity. A random employee interrupted me, asking if I meant hanging up frames with motivational quotes on them. I sighed dramatically and told him absolutely not, explaining that true motivation comes from the all-time fashion greats like Bella Hadid, Tyra Banks, and Kendall Jenner. The entire room just gawped at me in dead silence while Charlotte, sitting across from me, furiously signaled with her hands for me to stop talking immediately. I mentally rolled my eyes, thinking that everyone in this corporate world was just so incredibly boring. So I decided to just shut up and sit back down. My first afternoon was a blur of tedious meetings and endless schedule. I sat in my new office, feeling completely dazed, while everyone spouted corporate gibberish and shoved papers for me to sign. But every cloud has a silver lining, and for a foodie like me, that meant dinner meeting. I saw a restaurant name on the schedule and got instantly excited. That night, we went to a fancy Japanese sushi restaurant. I thought these business people really knew how to enjoy life, so I immediately started taking tons of food pictures right in front of Matthew and our business partners. But before I could even take my first bite, the clients bombarded me with questions about project proposals. Fortunately, Matthew stepped in and saved the day. Watching him explain things smoothly made me realize he was pretty good at his job, and honestly, quite attractive when his dedication reminded me that I needed to contribute my own talents to the company too. So the next morning, I taped a sign on my door that said, "Do not bother until 3 p.m. Then I happily sat back and watched my favorite fashion show on my laptop, dreaming of the day I would walk the runway in dazzling dresses instead of staring at confusing paper. When 3 o'clock came and I opened the door, an endless line of people was already waiting for me. I gave them an awkward smile, wondering if the company couldn't function without me. Right then, Charlotte marched over and angrily dragged me away. When we entered the conference room, I nearly fainted. I had no idea my computer was connected to the main projector, meaning everyone had been watching Project Runway with me the whole afternoon. Matthew, who was also there, giggled before trying to act serious. He told everyone they should thank their cute boss for giving them so many ideas for their problems, then led them out. Charlotte stayed behind, absolutely fuming. She snapped that there was nothing cute about it, warning me not to get any wrong ideas that he liked me, before running out to tell Matthew to wait for her. Watching her go, I suddenly remembered the gooey-eyed looks she always gave him and realized she had secret feelings for Matthew. Before I could pry further into Charlotte's crush, Dad sent me to Milan for another boring meeting. Sitting in business class, I was watching a fashion show to kill time when the guy next to me suddenly spoke up, startling me. He smiled, saying he thought that collection was totally overrated, apologized for scaring me, and introduced himself as Brian. He handed me his business card, and my eyes sparkled when I saw he was the chief executive officer of a modeling firm in France. Brian asked if I was going to Fashion Week, and I sighed, explaining I was only there for work. He called it a pity, mentioning a huge modeling contest happening that week, and winked, saying a true beauty like me was destined for the crown. I realized that if I won, Mom and Dad would finally see how serious I was about modeling. The offer was too amazing to refuse, so I high-fived him and decided to go with him. At the show, we sat in the front row, and I turned my phone completely off to immerse myself in the glamour, excitedly applauding as the models walked by. Afterward, Brian kept his word and took me to the audition. I was nervous at first, but the other candidates looked so amateur that I instantly felt like a pro, strutting down the runway with total confidence. But reality called the moment I turned my phone back on and saw a zillion missed calls from Dad and Matthew. Sensing major trouble, I quickly grabbed Brian's contact info and flew home. The second I walked into the living room, Charlotte went into full banshee shrieking mode, calling me irresponsible and selfish for skipping the meeting. She turned to Dad, warning him that if he didn't do something, I would destroy the company he worked so hard to build. Dad looked stern and agreed, but then he turned super angry at Charlotte instead of me. He snapped that instead of yelling at her sister now, she should have been there in Milan to help out, adding that he was deeply disappointed in her. Charlotte's face turned completely pale. I felt terrible because Dad should have been scolding me, not her, so I gave her a deeply apologetic look. The next morning, feeling bad about what happened, I went to Charlotte's small office to talk to her. As I approached, I heard her arguing with someone inside. I walked in and was shocked to see Matthew staring at a desk covered in photos of Brian and me. Charlotte pointed a finger at me and angrily snapped that it looked like we were secretly dating. Looking closer, I panicked. One photo showed Brian with his arm around my waist at the show, something I hadn't even noticed, and another showed him giving me flowers while I looked totally hesitant. But Matthew just stood up and calmly told her that a few photos couldn't change the fact that we were getting engaged. He grabbed my wrist and pulled me out into the corridor, leaving Charlotte completely stunned. Out in the quiet hallway, I pulled away and asked how he was so sure I wasn't seeing someone else. Matthew stepped in close, his face inches from mine, and murmured that it was just a feeling. Then, blushing slightly, he added that maybe it was just his hope. But he suddenly stopped, looking too awkward, and took his words back. I froze, my face flushing bright red. What did he mean by hope? And holy shrimp, why was my heart beating so crazy? I quickly regained my composure and ran away to my office, leaving him behind. When I got home that night, I let out a sigh, thinking the day was finally over. But the second I walked into the living room, Dad slammed those exact same pictures down in front of me. He was so incredibly mad that he declared our engagement ceremony would be tomorrow instead of a month from now. I sat there in total shock because I had absolutely not mentally prepared for this. So there I was on an evening boat ride along the Navigli Canal, wearing a gorgeous white dress that looked exactly like a wedding gown. You might think I was finally waiting for my fiancé at our engagement ceremony, but just kidding. Brian had called me at the last minute with the best news ever. A major fashion brand had chosen me as their ambassador, and I needed to fly to Milan for some paperwork. Thanks to him, I successfully escaped that forced engagement. I felt incredibly liberated, finally pursuing my dream instead of paying heed to my dad's ridiculous order. But my happiness vanished the next morning. I woke up in my hotel bed and reached for my phone, but it was gone. I checked the nightstand, only to realize my passport, my wallet, and all of my belongings had completely disappeared. I dashed to the reception to ask for Brian's room, but the staff shook their heads and said there was no one by that name staying there. Frantic, I checked their computer for his number and searched for any info about the modeling contest, but found absolutely zilch. I felt completely betrayed. Stuck in a foreign country, all alone with zero money, I couldn't bring myself to call Dad or Charlotte, so I contacted the only person I could. I used the hotel phone to call Matthew, and he flew over to Milan immediately. That evening, we were walking along the canal to get some dinner before heading back. I fully expected him to be furious because I had run away from our engagement, but he was quiet the whole time. Feeling awkward, I asked if it was really okay for him to suddenly leave work. Matthew looked at me and gently replied that it was fine because I always came first. Trying to act cool, I told him that while I appreciated his help, It didn't mean I wanted to get engaged because I wasn't ready to commit. Matthew remained calm and murmured that while he had wanted this marriage at first, he wasn't so sure anymore. His words made my heart sink, worrying that my running away had truly upset him. The moment we stepped through the front door back home, Mom, Dad, and Charlotte were waiting in the living room. Charlotte instantly bombarded me with her high-pitched, dolphin frequency yelling, screaming about how much they had worried and how irresponsible I was. Suddenly, Matthew smirked and told Charlotte that she should have won an Oscar for her acting, but her own partner had played her this time. Matthew then explained the whole truth. Charlotte was the mastermind behind everything. She had hired Brian from the start to lure me away and make me look terrible in our parents' eyes, ensuring our engagement wouldn't happen. Everything had worked perfectly, except she didn't anticipate Brian's greed. Brian had called Matthew demanding a ransom for me, and during the call, the idiot fraud accidentally let Charlotte's name slip. We were all too shook to speak. Charlotte burst into tears, admitting it was her all along. She pointed at me and shouted that I had never done a single useful thing, yet always got everything meant for her, asking Mom and Dad why they chose me over. Matthew looked surprised and turned to Dad, asking if he really hadn't told us anything this whole time. Dad let out a sad sigh and confessed that they were not my biological parents. He explained that he used to be my real parents' private lawyer, and the company belonged to them. When my biological parents got into a terrible accident, they entrusted the company and me to him, asking him to arrange for me to marry Matthew as part of a deal with Matthew's family. Dad admitted that since I loved modeling, he had planned to let Charlotte run the company, but Matthew's family insisted on the original marriage deal, leaving Dad no choice. I felt completely numb. My birth parents were gone, and my current family wasn't blood-related. Mom started sobbing, telling me that they had always loved me as their true daughter. Looking at them, my eyes filled with tears. I hugged Mom tightly, telling them I was sure my birth parents would want me to be happy. I added that even though I was the lawful heiress, I would only harm the business, so I asked them to let Charlotte take over. Charlotte looked shocked, her voice softening as she agreed that no one should be forced into doing something they dislike or forced into love. Shortly after that, I left the boring office job behind for good. I put all my energy into training, and soon I was walking the runway at the Elite Model Look contest. I confidently strutted down the stage, seeing Mom, Dad, and Charlotte cheering for me from the audience. When the show ended, I nervously waited for the Master of Ceremonies to announce the winner. My heart raced, and then the announcer called out my name. I cheered happily, realizing I had finally made it. Suddenly, I spotted Matthew walking toward us, holding a massive bouquet of flowers. He congratulated me, smiling warmly. Mom, Dad, and Charlotte subtly stepped away to give us some space. I gave him a shy smile, and Matthew earnestly whispered that he knew love couldn't be rushed, but asked if I would go out with him whenever I felt ready. I grinned widely and asked him how about right now. Matthew looked surprised, then pulled me into a warm, tight hug.